They laughed at him, mocked the way he spoke, called him wooden, dull. A joke. They said he didn't belong in Hollywood, that he was too weird, too quiet, too broken. But while they were laughing, he was surviving, silently, and slowly becoming unstoppable. This is the story they never told you, the pain they never showed you. This is Keanu Reeves. And he didn't just act in movies, he lived in survival mode every single day. He was born already carrying pain. His father left when he was just 3 years old, vanished, no goodbye, no memories, just silence. And that silence followed him like a shadow. His childhood wasn't filled with joy, or laughter, or love. It was filled with movement, constant change. By the time he was 15, he had lived in 4 different cities, 3 different countries, multiple schools, no roots, no home, no peace. He struggled with dyslexia, words dance on the page, refusing to make sense. He couldn't keep up in school. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was feeling stupid, feeling behind, lost, left out. Can you imagine being a child, trying your best to understand the world, while the world keeps telling you you don't belong in it? So he did what survivors do. He found escape in acting, in stories, in pretending to be someone else, anyone else, because pretending felt safer than being himself. But Hollywood wasn't waiting for him with open arms. When he tried to break in, they rejected him, again and again. You're too stiff, too quiet, too flat. But no one asked why he was quiet. No one cared about the pain behind his eyes. They only judged the surface. And still, he didn't quit. He kept showing up, audition after audition, rejection after rejection, until one role changed everything. A Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, a goofy teen comedy. They laughed at him in the movie, and they laughed at him after. But this time, he laughed too, because now they knew his name. But fame didn't fix his soul, it didn't silence the pain, because life wasn't done breaking him. In 1993, Keanu lost his closest friend, River Phoenix, a young star with fire in his heart and demons in his blood. He died outside a nightclub. Overdose, gone in an instant. Keanu was shattered. He said he still thinks about River every day. How do you move on from that? How do you smile in front of cameras when your heart is heavy with loss? But somehow he kept going. He poured his grief into his work. Then came Speed, of The Matrix, John Wick, blockbusters, millions, global fame. But behind the scenes, more pain. In 1999, Keanu's daughter was stillborn, 8 months into the pregnancy. Her name was Ava. She never got to breathe. Just weeks after the loss, her mother, Jennifer Syme, died in a tragic car accident. Just like that, the 2 most precious people in his world were gone. No child, no partner, just grief and emptiness. And still, he kept going, not for fame, not for money, but maybe just to feel something, maybe to keep himself from falling apart. He never made his pain public, never used tragedy for attention. He mourned in silence. He rode the subway like a normal man, gave away millions from the Matrix to the crew, donated quietly, gave generously, loved deeply, and never asked for anything in return. He became known not just for his movies, but for his kindness, his humility, his soul. People would see him sitting alone on park benches, feeding birds, reading quietly, and they'd ask, why is he always alone? But maybe they were asking the wrong question. Maybe it wasn't that he was alone. Maybe he was just healing, because some wounds don't scream. Some wounds just sit inside you and wait to be heard. And yet he never gave up on life, never turned bitter, never stopped believing in good, in people, in hope. What do you call someone who keeps showing up, no matter how much they've lost? What do you call someone who keeps loving, even after his heart has been shattered? What do you call someone who turns pain into purpose? You call him Keanu Reeves. They mocked his voice. But it's now the voice of wisdom. They said he didn't belong in Hollywood. Now Hollywood feels empty without him. They called him wooden. But he was always made of steel, soft on the outside, unbreakable inside. He never chased the spotlight. But the spotlight found him, because real doesn't need to perform, it just needs to exist. And he did, authentically, quietly, powerfully. In a world that rewards noise, Keanu chose silence. In a business that thrives on ego, he chose humility. And in a life full of heartbreak, he chose kindness. He turned mockery into millions. He turned rejection into resilience. He turned loss into legacy. And not because he had to, but because it was the only way he knew how to survive. And maybe that's the most heroic thing of all. Not the fights in movies, but the battles no one sees, the silent suffering, the invisible strength. So the next time you feel overlooked, the next time the world laughs at your dreams, or calls you too soft, too slow, too broken, remember him. Remember Keanu. And remember, your scars don't make you weak. They make you real. You don't need to explain your pain to anyone. You just need to keep going, quietly, steadily, strongly. Because sometimes the most powerful rise is the one no one ever saw coming. And sometimes the most beautiful people are never the loudest in the room. They're not the ones chasing the spotlight or measuring their worth through applause. They're the ones who sit quietly with their pain and still find the strength to stand. The ones who've been cracked open by life but refuse to close their hearts. They've suffered in ways you'll never see and survived battles they'll never speak of, but they don't wear their pain like a weapon. They wear it like wisdom. You see, the most beautiful people are the ones who've been broken and still choose to build, who've been disappointed and still choose to believe, who've been left behind and still choose to love. They've cried alone in the dark and walked through life with invisible wounds, but you'd never know it, because they keep showing up, day after day, smiling, giving, hoping. Even when their world is silent, even when no one claps for them, even when no one sees the effort it takes just to breathe, that is strength, that is beauty. That is Keanu Reeves. He doesn't wear a crown, doesn't need a red carpet. He walks among people like one of them, because he knows he is one of them. He knows what it feels like to be invisible, to be the quiet one, the misunderstood one, the one the world overlooks until it can't anymore, because his silence was never weakness, it was restraint. His humility wasn't shyness, it was grace, and his stillness wasn't emptiness, it was depth. He didn't ask for sympathy, didn't broadcast his pain, he simply lived and kept going. Even when it would have been easier to quit, even when life gave him every reason to stop believing, he kept moving, quietly, steadily, powerfully. And that's why his story matters, because it's not just a Hollywood success tale, it's a human story, a story of grief, of resilience, of choosing light in a world full of darkness. He didn't become a legend because he was loud. He became a legend because he was real, because he never let the worst parts of his story define the best parts of his soul. So don't quit, not now, not when your heart is heavy, not when your dreams feel far, not when the world tells you it's too late. Don't quit just because they don't see you. Because maybe they're not meant to yet. Maybe your rise is still unfolding. Maybe your greatness is still in hiding, just like his was. Because if Keanu Reeves, a kid abandoned by his father, bullied by classmates, dismissed by critics, crushed by personal tragedy, if he can keep showing up, keep believing, keep loving, then maybe you can too. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're just becoming. Maybe your silence isn't weakness. Maybe it's preparation. Maybe your wounds aren't the end of you. Maybe they're the beginning. So breathe. Take your time. Be gentle with yourself. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be whole to keep going. Sometimes the most broken souls are the ones carrying the most light. And sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who fight with kindness. So the next time you feel like giving up, remember him. Remember Keanu. Remember the man who lost everything and still chose to give. The man who was mocked and still showed up with grace. The man who walked through fire and still chose peace. He didn't need to become a hero. He just needed to survive. And in doing that, he became more than a star. He became an example of how quiet strength can change the world. An example of how you can hurt and still heal, how you can lose and still love, how you can fall and still rise. So don't give up. Don't silence your story. Don't hide your pain like it's shame. Because maybe, just maybe, your scars are someone else's survival guide. Your journey is someone else's inspiration, and your rise is only just beginning, because if Keanu Reeves can survive all that and still remain gentle, still remain kind, then maybe you can too. Maybe you already are. This disclaimer: this video is created for educational and storytelling purposes only. All information is based on publicly available sources, interviews, and reports. We do not claim to own any images or video clips shown. They are used under fair use for commentary, research, and transformative purposes. All respect goes to the individuals featured. If any content needs to be credited or removed, please contact us directly.